1,000 years did I ever think I would make it here. Wandering through the bowels of the Great Pyramid, standing in front of the Sphinx, seeing structures and ruins that were thousands of years older than the country that I live in. For someone like me, growing up the way I did, saying that Egypt was a bucket list destination is like saying that Mars is a bucket list destination, in that I have more of a chance of getting to Mars than Egypt. But as it turns out, fate can be kind. I partnered with a company called Trova Trip and didn't really think anything would come of it, and what came of it was an Egyptian adventure with 6 of my followers. I did things I never thought I would do, and I saw things I never thought I would see. And now, I invite all of you watching at home, or wherever you're watching from, to journey with me now as I recount an unforgettable adventure in Egypt. After driving 5 hours to get to Dallas because I live out in the middle of nowhere, I got on a plane and headed to Chicago O'Hare Airport for a connecting flight. I've never been to Chicago before, and for some reason everybody was telling me, hey, look out for Chicago, it's a bad airport, it's a bad airport, and I thought surely it can't be that bad. Well, it was. It was bad. I've never been to an airport where to get to another terminal, you have to leave the airport and then go back in through security just to get to another terminal. Who does that? Nevertheless, I found my way to Turkish Airlines and got on my flight to go all the way around this gigantic green and blue marble that we all call home. This is going to be a long-haul flight, and I've never been to Egypt, and I've never been to the African continent before in my entire life, so I'm really looking forward to seeing it. And Chicago, I'm going to grant you a fair shake. I hope to return one day to see more than just your terrible, terrible airport. This was about a 13-hour flight, and thankfully you can skip it. Me and my back couldn't. But before we knew it, we were landing in Istanbul, Turkey, and it's there that I came across the nightmare of any long-haul traveler, a missed connection.
A lot like tasty cornbread stuffing, I'm stuck in Turkey.
I had only an hour to reach my connection as it was, and unfortunately our plane spent too much time on the tarmac, and I just didn't make it in time. Thankfully, Turkish Airlines were very good to me and arranged a place for me to rest just outside the airport. I was going to be stranded in Istanbul for about 12 hours, and while some people may see this as a bad thing, I always love learning about places that I've never been before and, quite honestly, never had any intention of visiting before. This was an opportunity, and I wasn't going to waste it. Nor was I about to miss my very first opportunity to stuff a Turkish breakfast into my fat face. I want to stress again that Turkish Airlines took great care of me during my unexpected layover in Istanbul, even though they didn't have to. They provided me with lunch, they provided me with breakfast, and they provided me with a hotel room to sleep in, because I was a tired boy by this point. Much to my surprise, I learned that Istanbul is known as a cat city. And I love cats, and I saw lots of cats, and I petted lots of cats, and I tried to take lots of cats home with me in my luggage, but customs wouldn't let me do it.
If I see a kitty, I must pet it. I don't make the rules, I simply follow them.
Kitty, kitty!
My unexpected sojourn in Istanbul was tragically short, just whenever I got hooked on the culture. The people there are warm and friendly and so inviting. I have to go back one day. Unfortunately, it was time to go. So I gave Chicago O'Hare a good-natured ribbing earlier, but I do have to praise the Istanbul airport because, quite frankly, it's one of the loveliest, most open, and well-run airports that I have ever been to in my entire life.
So that security checkpoint, which of course I wasn't going to film because I don't like that, was easily the easiest and most convenient security checkpoint I've ever been through. Istanbul Airport has definitely earned that 2024 Best Airport in the World award.
It was several hours until my flight to Cairo, and so I decided to return to the Istanbul airport to check out what all it offered. And I have to say, it offers a whole heck of a lot. Shops, restaurants, capsule hotels, and endless hours of people watching. I wandered solidly for a couple of hours and still only saw a very small fraction of this incredible transportation complex.
So I got me something naughty for lunch here from the Shake Shack because, you know, I like local flavors, and I kept thinking, where's my fork? Why didn't they give me a fork? That's awesome. I like this. It's all natural. It keeps plastic out of the landfills, and it works. Works darn good. We should do this in the States. Of course, somebody's probably going to tell me Shake Shack already does this. I don't know, it's the first time I've seen it, so it's new to me.
And as the sun dipped below the horizon, it was time to say goodbye to Istanbul as I began the 2-hour flight to my final destination, Egypt. I arrived at Cairo International Airport shortly after midnight, and it was hard to wrap my brain around the fact that I was here. I was actually in Egypt. Look, there's a pharaoh, and he's dancing suggestively. I don't know how to feel about that. At this time, I wish to convey my deepest apologies to Chicago O'Hare Airport because Cairo Airport makes them look like Istanbul's airport. There's a lot of standing around, a lot of inefficiency. I was stuck in line until about 1:45 a.m. I had a driver prearranged, but the second that I stepped outside, I got swarmed by cab drivers who just would not leave me alone. So my first travel tip to you, arrange your rides in advance. You should also prepare yourself to pucker during your ride through Cairo traffic because let me tell you, they don't really have traffic laws, they have traffic suggestions, most of which are ignored. I can't tell you how many times we had close calls with other cars and pedestrians walking in the middle of the highway. But my driver knew what he was doing, and before I knew it, I was walking into my room at the President Hotel in Cairo, tired and ready to roll.
Big, stupid, floppy adventure hat? Ready.
With absolutely no sleep under my belt because I was just so excited, it was time to hit the road with our guide and head to the crown jewel of Cairo, the Giza Pyramid Complex. I cannot stress what it's like to see these things for the first time. They just appear out of the haze as though they're ghosts, and they loom over you, even from what seems like miles away. They're just there, gigantic, ancient. They've seen so much. You can taste the age in the air. They almost seem unreal, as though it's some kind of an illusion. But they're there, solid, stony, and waiting. Although if they were waiting for me this entire time, they settled for very little. There are lots of dogs outside the Giza Pyramid Complex. They are all well-fed, took care of, and extremely polite. But there I am, right outside of the Great Pyramid. And that's when our guide asked us a question. Do you want to go inside? Well, yeah, I want to go inside. Let's go inside. How hard can it be? It turns out, pretty darn hard. One thing that I did not know is that as you get closer to the pyramid, they seem to shrink in scale. It's due, of course, to an optical illusion caused by the shape of the building, but once you get next to it and you stand next to those gigantic stone blocks, you get a true sense of the scale of the place. I just had to touch them, absorb some knowledge, or not. You enter the Great Pyramid through a hand-dug tunnel that was created by grave robbers centuries ago. I truly, truly hope that if you go into this building, you are not claustrophobic because it is crowded and there is not a lot of room to maneuver, as I was about to find out crawling up the shaft. It's a one-way street that for some reason or another accommodates two-way traffic. Being a majestic creature, crawling up the cramped shaft was hard. Ow. On my head. And my knees and my back and my pride, because while I was doing this, I actually split my pants and didn't know. until several hours later, so if you happen to have been at the Giza Pyramid Complex that afternoon, you're welcome for the free show, and I hope you enjoyed it. After getting out of the tiny shaft, you get into a much larger shaft. This one is grand, with ceilings that go up 20, 30 feet, and it makes you feel rather small sitting in the middle of it. Not that much longer to go until you're at the burial chamber. The burial chamber is rather sparse, and I did hear some people express disappointment at what they found there. I didn't find disappointment. I had a sense of accomplishment. Being that just a few years ago I weighed over 400 pounds, the fact that I could drag my wide behind into the pyramid in the first place is a victory for me. And that's a victory no one can take away or diminish.
Long lines, not ADA compliant, and no ride or even a snack bar at the end. 0 out of 5 stars.
Once done with the innards of the Great Pyramid, we decided to walk around the entire structure, which was a feat in of itself because, in case you don't know, these things are big. Very big. And they're covered in dogs.
Oh, he's delighted with himself.
He was literally doing downward dog.
Oh, there's two.
Oh,
They're
Yummy!
coming over. Hey, buddy.
I didn't mean to call you over.
You want to buy t-shirt? You want to buy t-shirt?
Whenever I see tourism videos about the Great Pyramids or Egypt in general, oftentimes I see people remark about the aggressive vendors, and I can tell you, those rumors are true. The vendors can be pretty dang redonkulous sometimes. That's why I'm going to give you travel tip number 2. Get a guide. Our guide, Adele, was absolutely astounding, and he seemed to know everybody, and he kept the really ridiculous vendors away. He also advised us, don't buy tchotchkes from those vendors because all they are selling are, in his words, cheap Chinese shit. Next, we went on a camel ride, and I can already feel those angry comments being typed, so let me just add, Trova Trip vetted this company and made sure that they were humane to their animals. My own personal eyewitness account is that these guides treated their camels with love and respect. I even caught one of the guides giving one of their camels a kiss. The camels were well fed, well taken care of, and they seemed to enjoy what they were doing. They even accepted a kiss and a pet from me. I didn't get spit on once, at least not by the camels. Next, it was time to move on to the mysterious Sphinx. After a quick guided tour of the temple ruins at the base of the monument, soon we were there. It's a fascinating sight, a monolith that has been staring out across the Sahara for thousands of years. Seeing all manners of events and all kinds of things, from the rise of empires to the falls of dynasties, and the worst thing that the 21st century has to offer, social media influencers.
This right here is the rarely seen backside of the Sphinx. You may call it the Sphinx Sphincter.
Yes, I know I'm kind of an influencer too, but at least I'm funny, right?
Hello, friends. I am here in Egypt, and I can confirm it is true. There is the magnificent Sphinx, the Great Pyramid, and right across the street, Pizza Hut. Because even in Egypt, no one out-pizzas the Hut. I'm not being paid for this, by the way, but at Pizza Hut, if you want to, let's talk.
And so I left the Giza Pyramid Complex humbled, knowing that these monuments were here thousands of years before I was born, and will be here thousands of years after I'm gone. Journeying back into the heart of Cairo, it was time to learn more of Egypt's ancient history at the Egyptian Museum. There, the displays and artifacts wove together an amazing tapestry of history, and our guide, Adele, walked us through it like an expert. I believe I learned more from him on this day than I've learned in any classroom. Again, if you ever visit Egypt, get a guide. They're amazing. Actually, ask for Adele. He's great. The most famous of the Egyptian Museum's collections are the artifacts found inside of the tomb of King Tutankhamun, including his throne and his famous gold burial mask that unfortunately we were not allowed to take pictures of. It was getting late in the day, and as I said, I hadn't slept in over 28 hours, and so it was time to do something about that. Me and my collection of fast friends ate dinner, and then we bid each other goodnight, and I slept like a baby. And it's a good thing, too, because we have a lot more stuff to do tomorrow. My second full day in Egypt was going to be a long day, and I mean that in the best possible way, because if I'm going to go all the way around the world to see things I've never seen before, I want to see as much stuff as I've never seen before, and so I like every day stuffed full of activities. Today it was time to venture outside of Cairo and into the countryside, because we were heading to the Saqqara necropolis. Rest can come later. For now, I want to see stuff. And one of the stuff that I'm seeing today is the Memphis Open Air Museum. The centerpiece of the Memphis Open Air Museum is this amazing statue of Ramesses the Great. Although the back is well worn and kind of looks like hammered butt, the front is incredibly preserved because this gigantic statue was lying face down in mud for thousands of years. Now the great king has been turned right side up and is now receiving thousands of visitors every day.
That's a big boy.
I was a little confused as to what an open-air museum actually was, and it turns out it's a holding area for artifacts that haven't been cataloged and put into museums or been made part of a restoration project yet. Basically, it's an archaeological junkyard. But I dig that. Where else can you just walk around things that are thousands of years old and touch them and get up and close and personal with them? There are no ropes, there are no barriers, it's just you and history. Some people may look down on this type of experience, but I am not some people. I enjoy this kind of stuff. I enjoy putting my hands on things that I wouldn't ordinarily be able to put my hands on. To me, a tactile learner, it's a place where history literally comes alive. Journeying deeper into rural Egypt, it was time to visit the Saqqara necropolis and the famous Step Pyramid. I want to once again recommend getting a guided tour if you're going to Egypt, or if you're even thinking about going to Egypt. For one, it is safer. For two, they keep the aggressive vendors away. And three, they lead you to places that you would have ordinarily overlooked. I mean, let's face it, as an American, whenever I think of Egypt, I just think of the Giza Pyramid Complex, and that's it. I would have never have thought of coming to Saqqara or the Step Pyramid. And I'm so glad that I did, because I saw so many things that I would have normally not even considered. There's also the matter that Egypt is just a completely different world than the one that I come from. I firmly believe that if I would have come by myself, as I usually do on these trips, I would have been completely lost, and I would have been one of those multitude of vloggers who whines and complains and tells people to avoid this amazing place. Don't avoid it. Just get a guide. Oh God, the internet influencers are here too. The Step Pyramid is one of the original pyramids ever built and was built a little less than 5,000 years ago. It was built to house the remains of King Zoser, and I believe it was designed by Imhotep, who, if I'm not mistaken, was the bad guy from The Mummy. Fortunately, Zoser Pyramid is a lot easier to navigate than the Great Pyramid thanks to a recent renovation. The pathways are level and very well lit and give this air of safe mysteriousness as you walk through. Just Watch your head. If you're a tall boy like myself, you are going to have a little bit of cranial injury. In the heart of the pyramid, you find the burial chamber, and you are just not prepared for how deep it is. Let's just say that if you were to fall down there, you would have a lot of time to think about how screwed you are before you hit the bottom. The next step on our tour was the Teepee Pyramid and the funerary complex next door. The funerary complex is a bunch of very well-preserved buildings full of inscriptions, paintings, and hieroglyphs. This is the pyramid, by the way. I know, it looks like a hill. There are a dozen of these all over the archaeological site. Dozens of them. I would have never known. We took a walking tour of the Tomb of Cagnimni and were awestruck by the inscriptions, hieroglyphs, and paint that was still on the walls. I could not believe that these carvings were holding on to the pigments that had been put on them many millennia before. I'm just so used to seeing carvings with absolutely no color to them whatsoever, and just assumed that was the way that they were supposed to be. And to see the reds, the blues, all of the different colors that still survive to this day, it was fascinating. And really, just the tip of the iceberg to what I would see later. Of course, we had to venture into the Tete Pyramid, and it was much less of an ordeal to get into there than it was the Great Pyramid, even though I still had an aching back and aching thighs and an aching head from my first journey into a pyramid. But I was in the burial chamber before I knew it, and they were a lot more chill about taking videos and pictures inside than they were at the Great Pyramid. And I guess now is as good a time as any to give you travel tip number 3, and that is, nothing in Egypt is free. The locals are very friendly, they will take pictures for you, they will help you with your bags, they'll give you directions, but they will expect to be tipped. Now, you can always say no, you can always carry your own stuff and take your own pictures, but if you do take advantage of one of the locals' kindness, be prepared to shell out a couple of dollars.
What in the world?
No judgments here, it's just part of the culture, part of their way of life. The guys here in this burial chamber, they recommended a few places for us to take pictures and then asked for a tip. It's just the way it is. I've seen some travel vloggers put off by this behavior, but you know, you can always say no. Don't be afraid to say no. Don't think it rude to ignore somebody if they won't take no for an answer. Just say no. What is this in my hand? Oh, these are silkworm cocoons because strangely enough, after we left the Saqqara Pyramid complex, we went to a carpet making school for a tour. Now, I know what you're thinking. Hey, that's local customs. That is local traditions. That is getting a taste of what it's like to be an Egyptian. Yes and no. This was, at its heart, a sales pitch. Now, don't get me wrong. I enjoyed the tour. I enjoyed seeing how they make silk strands. I enjoyed seeing how they're weaved together into a rug. The skills on display were quite amazing. But it was just a high-pressure sales pitch to buy a rug. This was the first of a few unscheduled stops at shops and schools, but it would not be the last, and I highly suspect that our tour guide might have been getting a cut of their sales, and that's fine. As I said, you can always say no. The tour of the school was neat. I saw a lot of things that I didn't know and learned. This loom, by the way, is 400 years old. That's cool. But always remember travel tip number 3. It was 3, right? I think it was 3. Don't be afraid to say no. Buying things while you're on tours is never mandatory. Just enjoy the tour. I actually did buy a rug, a little tiny one, because it looked like my cat Demona. And Demona's the cutest baby ever. As the sun began to set, it was time to go back into Cairo, but we were not going to stay in Cairo. You see, it was actually time to leave. We were headed to Luxor. Not by bus and not by plane, my friends. We were going by train. An 11-hour sleeper train to Luxor. The train was a little delayed getting there, but there were kitties to pet. Lots and lots of kitties. And I do like to pet the kitties.
Can you fit in my bag? I want to take you home. I want to take you home. I will call. I will call you now. Excuse me. No, that's too much. You've gone too far. You've gone too far. Well, keep petting me and I won't do it. There you go.
After about an hour of petting random kitties, the train did arrive and we went on board. And, well, here's my thoughts.
Okay, it's a little cramped, but it's bigger than the room I stayed in Japan. The bed is existent.
I do get a functional sink. Oh no.
And they have some truly magnificent and beautiful pieces of art. Oh, wait. That's just the mirror.
Oh, we're moving.
Well, that's a surprise. I also have seating, just in case I don't want to do any laying. That just opened all by itself. Quite honestly, this is really fun. I like this. And I'm really looking forward to the first night in my very own sleeper car on a train. So here I am on the sleeper train, and I have been provided sustenance in the form of food. And I know what you're saying. Jay, you've eaten enough food, haven't you? Well, first of all, shut up. Secondly, no, I actually haven't. I've eaten barely anything today, and now I'm going to. So join me. We have some kind of rice, some kind of meat, some kind of dessert pastry, and I don't even know what the heck this is. But is that not the fun of visiting someplace that is so drastically different from where you live? You get to eat a lot of weird stuff and you don't know what it is. Oh, they're fries. Strangely anticlimactic. Okay, for real? This is some darn good rice. Darn good. I think this is lamb. I'm not sure what animal this came from, but it's a delicious animal. The fries are not that good. Very soggy. I should really stop eating them. So in case you've been wondering, no, I haven't gotten the famous Egyptian runs yet. And it's because I actually do, despite my girth, I don't eat a whole lot. And I only drink bottled water when I'm abroad. Then again, I only drink bottled water when I'm a guy, too. And now the mystery pastry. Yes, I'm eating my dessert now. I'm an adult. I can do whatever I want. That is delicious. That is... Oh my god. Yes. Just yes. Thus far, the only disappointment have been these fries. They're terrible. You know, quite honestly, it's relaxing. You got the repetitive noises of the train. You kind of need a rock to sleep by the motion. I think I'm gonna sleep pretty well tonight.
Well, I just woke up because we're an hour away from Luxor, and I slept pretty good. I kept getting jerked awake last night anytime the train stopped, but overall, yeah, it wasn't bad.
And now it's breakfast time. We have assorted pastries and a yogurt. Sounds good. I will say that the mattress was not the best in the world. Kind of hard as a rock, but overall, a very unique experience. One I may not do again, but still unique experience. Guava juice is very popular here. I can't say I'm a fan, but I will drink it. And it's not bad. It just doesn't hit for me. But it is wet. And I will drink things that are wet. So, kind of dirty, kind of basic. A Motel 6 on wheels. but it got me where I needed to go. And it did it while I slept. So that makes me happy.
And so, reasonably well rested, it was time to continue the Egyptian adventure in the city of Luxor, where all kinds of ancient and modern surprises awaited us.
What is this? Temple for ants?
With the dawn of the early morning sun, we began our day at the Temple of Karnak. Built about 4,000 years ago, this temple complex is the largest ever created on this planet. This is where the pharaohs were said to go to communicate with their god, Amun-Ra.
Well, it was a wonderful shot of the sunrise, but thank you.
Early in the morning, you'll see a veritable flock of hot air balloons traveling the skies over Luxor. I don't know about you, but there's no way you'd ever get me in one of those things. Never in 100 billion million years. Never, 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 never. Never. I know I keep going on about our guide, but come on, he was awesome. And he also knew when was the perfect time to visit these tourist destinations. Going really early in the morning, particularly since we'd gotten all of our sleep on the train, meant that we pretty much had Karnak Temple to ourselves for about half an hour. And that was neat. You really get a sense of the scale of the place, and, I don't know, the peace and the quiet among these ruins make it more of a profound experience. One of the more fascinating things that I found about Karnak Temple is that the entire structure has basically been pieced together like a giant jigsaw puzzle. I don't know, I guess I just had this idea that these ruins were found in one piece when they weren't. They were painstakingly and lovingly reassembled. Walking through the ruins, you'll see this beautiful, well-preserved hieroglyph, and then next to it, you'll see a blank wall where the hieroglyphs are missing. Gone from history. Vanished without a trace. Never to be seen again. According to our guide, if you walk around this scarab statue a certain number of times, you get to have a wish granted. I'm not certain if this is an actual, factual fact about this structure, or if he's just having a laugh with us. In any case, we had quite a procession going around this thing after a couple of minutes, so if it was a trick, bravo. Bravo.
Oh my gosh, what have you guys started?
A conga line, clearly.
Whether it's the massive scale of this complex or just how tall they built it, you really feel small when you're here. Not only in stature, but also in time. You realize that you've only been on this earth a fraction of a second compared to the time that these monuments have been here. It's quite humbling and would have been amazing had it not been for certain people ruining the moment. I cannot stress how gigantic this place was. Just when you think you're about to run out of temple, you turn a corner and there is much, much more temple to go. This will temple the temple right out of you, and I mean that in the best way possible. However, if you ever are lucky enough to be here, I do encourage you to do some proper exploring of the place. Give yourself several hours, because around every corner, in every nook and cranny, you'll make new discoveries, you'll see new things, and you might even be fundamentally changed for the rest of your life.
I love this group of idiots.
I am going to once again say this, and I know you guys are getting sick of me saying this. Get a guide if you're going to Egypt. They will take you to all the really cool places. And trust me, Adele took us to some really, really cool places. Places that I had never even heard of before. And I'm so glad I know of them now. I just think of all the experience that I've had here and all of the experiences that I haven't had at places that I didn't know exist or that I didn't explore. And that just makes me sad. it just makes me want to see every corner of the world and makes me depressed that I won't live long enough to do it. After exploring the enormity of Karnak Temple, our guide took us to a papyrus art studio. And yes, while this was another high-pressure sales situation, I found this absolutely fascinating. I had no idea how they took a plant and turned it into papyrus paper. We had the entire process explained to us to the point that I honestly think that I could make papyrus right now. I was so taken by this experience that I actually bought some papyrus souvenirs, bookmarks for my children, and another cat picture for me. Looks like my Demona. Shut up, she's beautiful. We saw sunrise at one temple, and we saw sunset at another. This is Luxor Temple, and it is highly unusual. This 3,500-year-old monolith was actually not built to deify a pharaoh or worship a god, but was rather a place to celebrate the coronation of the pharaoh. As a matter of fact, Luxor Temple is actually connected to Karnak Temple via this roadway known as the Avenue of the Sphinxes. This roadway continues for 2.7 kilometers until you get to Karnak Temple. It's believed that the pharaoh was carried from temple to temple on board a ship carried by several loyal servants. Although nowhere near as sprawling as Karnak Temple, don't let the relatively small size of Luxor Temple fool you. This place is magnificent and beautiful, and as the sun goes down and the artificial lighting kicks in, it becomes a truly magical and surreal place. Unfortunately, the crowd during these hours was a bit crushing, and so we didn't quite get the intimate one-on-one time with Luxor like we did with Karnak. Still, this is one destination I would definitely say go visit if you ever find yourself there. I would like to see it again, maybe early in the morning before anybody wakes up. But it was time to leave because I got talked into doing something crazy tomorrow. Yeah, look at the bats. Aren't the bats cool? That's a lot of bats. The next day began at 4 a.m., an ungodly, unholy hour that I had heard tales of but never really thought existed. My travel companions had talked me into something that violated my instinct of survival, something that I just knew I was going to regret. This gang of awful, evil people pressured me into boarding a ferry to cross the Nile to what I was sure would be my ultimate demise. I should also point out, and I promise I'm not making this up, we actually got into a boat accident while we were crossing the river. Our boat ran into another boat, and one of my companions almost got her head knocked off. Fortunately, the captain of the other boat leaped onto our boat and steered it to safety. I was so shook by the ordeal that I didn't even think about getting footage of it. And I really wish I had gotten footage of it because I know about 25% of you think I'm making this up. I swear I'm not. Once we got off the boat, the procession to my scheduled execution began. For you see, these people who claim to be my friends talked me, someone who is deathly afraid of heights, into getting into a hot air balloon. I do not forgive and I do not forget. My retribution will be swift and unexpected.
I'm just proving I was actually up here.
You did this.
I did it.
You did this.
I did it. What have I done?
I could stop screaming, we were on the ground. And although I kid, I have to say, I'm very grateful that I went with a group of people who would not let my own personal fear stop me from doing something amazing. So to my Trova Trip travel buddies, thank you very much. No time to gain my land legs now. We were on our way to the next destination that awaited us. There in the stony hills outside of Luxor, just a short drive away, was the legendary Valley of the Kings, the resting places of some of Egypt's most powerful and influential pharaohs. When I first entered my first tomb, I didn't really see anything I wasn't expecting to see. Hieroglyphs, carvings, long hallways, all of that stuff. But then, as I got deeper into the tomb, something miraculous appeared. Paint. And I don't mean the little flecks of paint that we saw at the Saqqara site. I mean full painted figures on the wall, preserved in the desert sand for over 4,000 years. Time constraints meant that we couldn't visit every single tomb in the Valley of the Kings. No, you would need over a full free day to do that, so we could only look at 3 or 4. We decided one in particular we would save for last, but for now, we would explore at least 2 other tombs.
And here we see King Ramesses saying, "No, really, I don't want a t-shirt." And this is the pharaoh asking, "Whose dog did this in my lawn?" The ancient Egyptians were so advanced they already knew the plot of Alien. Hey, Macarena. Come on, I'm walking here. Could this be knowledge that the ancient Egyptians had of DNA? No, it's not. No, dear, I couldn't possibly eat another piece of cake. Winston. Don't do that. It's illegal. I do what I want. I don't care if you are a good boy. I'm not talking to you anymore.
Can you please knock before you come in? We're pooping.
It's hot. It's so hot and humid. Hot and humid and sticky. What line are we waiting in for, bro? What kind of ride is this? You didn't sneak your dog onto this bus, did you? No. Okay, you know the rules. Whoever gets the middle of the wishbone gets the wish. Jack, I wish I could quit you.
This day was, without a doubt, the hottest day that we had experienced in Egypt so far. I don't know what temperature it was, but it was easily over 100 degrees, and down in the tombs, that heat was added with humidity and the bodily funk of tourists from all over the world. Which is why I guess it's time for travel tip number 4. Expect crowds. Don't be a Karen. Everybody else wants to see this stuff too, so just expect crowds. Expect to wait, expect for people to stop and take pictures in front of you. Just expect crowds. I know travel tips are supposed to make your life easier, but I made no such promise. Our final stop in the Valley of the Kings was the famous tomb of King Tut. Now, the only reason why King Tut is really famous today is because none of his stuff was stolen out of his tomb after he died. There's also the matter of a certain curse, which did not befall us.
I'm in King Tut's tomb. Holy crap.
King Tut's treasures had long since been removed from his tomb. We actually saw them at the Egyptian Museum, but the most amazing thing still in King Tut's tomb is King Tut himself.
Is he okay?
Today, King Tut is famous for a different reason. He's the only Egyptian pharaoh who still rests in the Valley of the Kings. Well, that we know of.
Guys, I hate to tell you, I don't think he's gonna make it.
Having paid respect to King Tut, it was time to get back on our golf cart and head back to the parking lot because our time in the Valley of the Kings, a lot like the kings themselves, had come to an end. After our visit to the Valley of the Kings, our driver and guide took us to an alabaster factory, because of course they did. There, we learned the skinny on the alabaster trade, how to recognize real alabaster versus the fake alabaster, and how alabaster is taken from the earth and manufactured and carved. Alabaster's not really my thing. I don't really have a taste for it, and to be honest, I was not interested in purchasing any, so I just said no and walked away. However, me and my friends now know how to make alabaster, and so we have some irreplaceable skills that will come in handy after the apocalypse. Our next stop on our tour was Queen Hatshepsut's temple, and I love the history behind this because Hatshepsut's temple has been lovingly reconstructed as it was in ruins just a few years ago. It seems that the king who came after Hatshepsut demanded that her temple be torn down and his be built out of the rubble that was left over. Well, here we are in the 21st century. Hatshepsut's temple is in one piece and his lies in ruins next to it. I love that. It's like cosmic spite. It was indeed hot. It was disrespectfully hot at the temple. The temperature that we had experienced at the Valley of the Kings was nothing like what we were experiencing right now. And climbing the steps up to the second terrace was an arduous task. I saw many other tourists just give up and head back to the snack bar where there was shade and water and soda and cookies and candy. And I did end up back there myself, but I did explore the temple first. These are the Colossi of Memne, two restored monoliths out in the desert. We stopped there for just a moment to get out and take some pictures. At the end of the day, it was time to take a sunset cruise on the Nile River. I'd been looking forward to this for the entire trip. It just sounded so relaxed and so perfect. And so this was the one part of the trip where nothing worked out right. It turned out we decided to go on this sailboat on a day that there was exactly no wind. And so we had to be towed by another ship, which was weird and strange and unusual. But you know what? We made it work. We were still out on the Nile, it was still sunset, and it was still lovely. It was great to spend this day with these new friends of mine, and it was great to explore this land together. I'm so glad I came. I'm so glad they came. Maybe one day you can come. The day had come to leave Luxor behind and return to Cairo for what would be our final full day in Egypt. A quick flight all the way back to where we started, and before we knew it, we were at Cairo International Airport. With a full half day ahead of us. Full half day? Isn't that an oxymoron, or at least a contradiction? Oh well. With a half day ahead of us, we journeyed to Kitty Kitty Bazaar. Or maybe I should call it Here Kitty Kitty Bazaar. Why do I keep finding the cats, or do the cats keep finding me? Why do I keep finding cats knowing full well I can't get them home? I want to take all the cats home with me. Outside the gates of the bazaar, one of the members of my party was approached by some locals who asked her if she would mind taking some pictures with them. We were kind of confused, but our guide told us that they thought that she might be a celebrity. You know what? I can see it. People tell me I look like Jack Black and Charlie Manson all the time. Nobody wants to take a picture with me. Kitty Kitty Bazaar is a haggler's paradise. You have rows and rows and rows of shops selling anything you can imagine, from soaps to t-shirts to tchotchkes to, well, you name it. I have to admit, by this point, I was kind of shopped out and I really didn't see anything that appealed to me, so I just put my hand on my wallet and said, thanks, but no thanks. Interestingly enough, we were being followed around by security. Not because they didn't trust us, but because they wanted to make sure that nothing was going to happen to the tourists in these alleys. Again, get a guide. You will not regret it. A lot of the shops were selling that cheap Chinese crap that our guide warned us about, but a lot of the shops were also selling unique, locally made things. Best of all, aside from a few roving salesmen, none of the vendors were overly aggressive. Sure, they were kind of pushing a little bit, but they weren't following us and they did know how to take no for an answer. I decided to park myself at a cafe, have a nice cold refreshing Coke Zero, and just wait for this shopping trip to end. It's just not my bag. There was one final item on our itinerary, a farewell dinner, because we were all about to go to our respective homes all over the world. I didn't film at the farewell dinner because I just wanted it to be us. I really enjoyed this group. I like to think that we're friends now, and I really hope that we can meet each other again. Maybe take another trip to someplace crazy. Who knows? The future is bright, and I really hope that my new friends will be a part of it. I really wish that I could tell you that my trip to Egypt ended in an extraordinary way, but it ended in the most ordinary way possible. I got on a plane, I flew back to Istanbul, and then I got on another plane and flew back to Dallas. I will say, though, that something magical did happen on the way home. Our plane flew over Greenland. Now, I know many of you have probably been on planes that have done this, but I've always been fascinated with Greenland. It's like this weird wilderness that I know I'll never visit. And so, I took a moment to just watch it roll by. I took some pictures, and I want to go there. Trova Trip, do you have packages to Greenland? I want to go to Greenland. After 13 hours in the air, I was finally home. Well, I would be after I drove 5 hours to get home. Oh, did I mention that I think our plane almost crashed whenever we landed? Because I think our plane almost crashed when we landed. Fear not, though, for I survived, with memories that will last a lifetime. And I would like to thank you for joining me on this remembrance of these memories that will, last a lifetime or something. Hey, if you ever want to go on one of these trips with me, check out my website, jasonroygaston.com, the section that says Travel With Me. That will lead you to my Trova Trip page, and it will show you where we're going next. And I would love to see you there.